let me then give the floor to the next speaker about Norwegian economy and today's market, namely our new commercial counselor at the embassy, Mr. Frode. And Frode, he started off only in October this year at the embassy, but he has a broad business experience in Norway, in Avinor, being head of aeronautical services and Oslo Airport Safety Manager, Technical Director for the, what is it called, Flytoget Express train. And he has been employed by Rambøll Project Director. And he is Russian speaking. So, then I give the word and the floor to Frode first, but they are sharing this. Sverre Rustad standing next to Frode. He is the commercial, not the commercial counselor, but the counselor for, it's always such long names, but counselor for education, science and technology, Sverre Rustad. He has been for 3 years in Moscow and is from the Ministry of Education in Norway. Education and research, as you know, has been running for many years, and especially up north there are a lot of cooperation. So these two gentlemen have really some interesting news to bring forward to you. So please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear this? Yes? Good. Right. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about the perspective of the Norwegian Embassy then, from the Commercial Counselor, and then Education, Science and Technology part. We'll start with this figure, as you all know. I think it's good to always remind ourselves that we are good neighbors. That was mentioned earlier on as well. It's the northwest corner of Russia, and then Norway is actually a quiet corner of the world. We need some quiet corners in the present day. We have historically had very good ties within commerce. This is being challenged at the moment, as you know from this picture. In the last 10 years, there has been quite a steady growth of the commercial ties between Norway and Russia. This is then the export from Norway to Russia. You can see the green areas is the actual, measured in money, and the red line is year-on-year development. So you can see relatively stable until last year, where it goes down, and it's now almost 70 to 80% down year-on-year from 2014, first half year of 2014 to 2015, and that is basically fish. So when the fish left the market, that has this effect. This is then last year, where you will see that the actual export value is very considerably down. Now, if you're trying to look for something positive, we can see that the red line, which is this year, has a very slight upward trend. So we're trying to keep a positive approach to this. Now, if we look at then the headlines, obviously, in the perspective of Norwegian companies, which I'm trying to take, then the economic situation is by far the most important. With the low ruble, it is problematic for both Russian companies and Russian consumers to get Norwegian services or Norwegian goods. That's very basic. The political situation does not make this any easier, obviously. However, speaking with Norwegian companies, they're much more concerned about the economic situation, which might have a more long-term perspective than the political situation, which normally changes more rapidly. And we have seen that both in the long and the short term, of course. However, all in all, what we see is that many Norwegian companies worry about going into the Russian market at the moment. And what is not surprising about that is what I think was mentioned by several others earlier today, the lack of predictability. Because if you consider to do investments in any market, you do have to know what is going to come out at what time. So that makes also the future of our commercial relationships relatively unpredictable. But what I get as feedback from Norwegian companies that we are in contact with is sort of a cautious long-term optimism, but maybe a step back at the moment. It is difficult to convince the boardrooms in Norway that this is a good time to enter the Russian market. However, we come back to both the positive sides of this and the more perhaps challenging parts in a second. First, we'll hear a little bit about the research and development part.
Thank you, Frode, and hello, everyone. Yesterday, I had lunch with a man called Jürgen Wienert, who's a researcher at the University of Tromsø. We talked about pingos. I don't know if you know what pingos are. They are heaps of gas hydrates on the ocean bed, covered by mud and with a basin of methane underneath. And under given conditions, they can erupt, almost like a small explosion. Now you may ask what this has to do with doing business. Well, firstly, some people think that gas hydrates may become a source of energy in the future. And secondly, if you should be so unfortunate as to drill into one of these things, the result could be quite disastrous. And it's known that these pingos exist close to the Yamal Peninsula, but Norwegian researchers are now seeking the cooperation of Russian researchers to chart more of the Barents Sea and see if you find them in other places as well. That's just an example of the kind of research cooperation that's going on between Norway and Russia. In fact, there's a lot of cooperation between Norway and Russia in research and education. There's a lot of cooperation in business, as we've been hearing earlier today. So far, contacts between these two sectors is limited. This has to do with characteristics of both the Norwegian economy and the Russian economy, which I will come briefly back to, but also I think there's an untapped potential here. In other words, I think it's possible to find synergies between cooperation in research and education and business cooperation. I've just pointed out some main fields of cooperation here in research. I could have added space. As you may know, space industry is quite significant in Norway. It has a turnover of about, if I remember rightly, 6 billion Norwegian kroner per year, which is around $700 million. And there's significant cooperation between Norway and Russia. In 2018, ESA, the European Space Agency, is going to land a rover on Mars in cooperation with Roscosmos, the Russian space organization, and part of this technology has already been tested on Svalbard. Obviously, there's also cooperation in many other sectors, but it's mainly long-term basic research, and this is, of course, one reason why there are so few contacts with business. Sorry. No, oops. I think I did something wrong.
Let's see.
Yeah, I pushed. Sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Apparently.
No problem. I will find it.
Right. So what do I push afterwards? I think I'll push page down. So, yeah. Okay, so yeah. So obviously research is relevant for business in different ways. In a direct way, for instance, the fishing quotas that are determined every year between Norway and Russia in annual negotiations are based on a long-term research cooperation. It goes back more than 50 years and it's been quite successful in the sense that fish stocks are sustainable. Also, of course, you have products that are a direct result of research. I don't know if you know about a Norwegian company called Medisteam that's active in Russia and many other countries. It's a small company. It makes equipment which monitors the blood circulation in the body after heart operations. So it's quite advanced technology. It's not based on research cooperation, but I think medicine is one area where that possibility should be explored. In other words, to create synergies between the considerable cooperation that's going on in research and the efforts to export Norwegian medical technology to Russia. And of course, you couldn't drill for oil in the Barents Sea or anywhere else without knowing about the geological conditions, the meteorological conditions, the oceanographic conditions, and so on, which are all the results. All this knowledge is the result of basic research. One area where we're now looking at cooperation, I think Frode will come back to this, is aquaculture. Aquaculture is classified by the OECD as low-tech, but in fact a lot of research has gone into the input factors, such as the nets. The material technology that was developed for the oil industry in the 70s has been very useful in producing nets for fish farming. Also research on fish vaccines that was done as it were independently of the idea of developing aquaculture has turned out to be quite useful. And of course, last but not least, when you cooperate in research, you establish personal relationships that can also be useful in other contexts, including business. I will pass quickly over this. Innovation. Both Russia and Norway, as we've heard, have economies that are quite heavily dependent on oil and gas, but there are also some significant differences that we've heard about. One difference is perhaps that the Norwegian economy is more open and more flexible, as we've also heard. I'll skip quickly to the next slide, which I think gives you some food for thought. A lot of technological breakthroughs have been made in Russia, but they haven't resulted in sort of world-famous companies that sell products based on these breakthroughs. And as young entrepreneurs, you may want to ask yourselves why this is the case and what can be done about it. I'll just point to one factor, which I looked at just before I came. The EU produces every year an index of the companies in the world that invest most in research and development. They have 2,500 companies on their list. 3 of these companies are Russian. 3 out of 2,500 that invest the most in research and development. Norway has 10. The United States has 829, just for comparison. And I think that's one important element in trying to explain why the innovation sector is quite weak in Russia. But I'll leave it at that. I know Frode will come back to what sectors may be most promising for cooperation. Thank you.
Well, I think it's worth keeping in mind that oil and gas is still important. And as was said earlier, maybe for the next 25 years it will be a significant factor of the Norwegian economy and most probably also the Russian one. We have actually very good bilateral cooperation. There is the energy dialogue, which is called, between the ministries of Norway and Russia goes on. That goes both to developments in what was earlier a disputed area, but it's also in general cooperation. The offshore market is weak at the moment. There are almost no new projects, but this has all to do with the low oil price. If and when the oil price does come up, which is of course disputable, then there could be some more opportunities offshore. Onshore, however, the market is stable. There is activity going on, but at the moment there is quite little demand for services from Norwegian supply companies, which means they're also downsizing both in Norway and abroad. Statoil, as you know, is active. We have Representative Statoil here today. You can get details from him. And there are some opportunities for supply companies related to, for instance, the Yamal LNG project. and other projects that are not affected by the sanctions. So basically, oil and gas is still important. It's like a baseline, if you like. The other sectors that we are involved in projects from the commercial section of the embassy is in the mining sector. We have some quite successful Norwegian companies that are in the mining industry. This week there is an exhibition in Petrozavodsk where we have 4 Norwegian companies represented, and so that's actually quite positive, and it goes under the radar, if you like. It's not affected by any sanctions, and it's been going on for many years. The medical sectors, as Sverre mentioned, there are some good examples of projects that are going quite well, and there is a need in the Russian market for some of the expertise and equipment that can be given by Norwegian companies. We have a very promising project in food ingredients, which is also important in this market. The marine sector has been mentioned. Equipment and support of the fishing fleet is ongoing and has some very positive perspectives in the future. And tourism, although from 2014 to 2015 we have seen approximately 40% down in the number of Russians in Norway on holiday. This is still, however, there's 60% left. That's what I said. My glass is half full, so there is an opportunity there. Now, that leads us to the most promising sectors going forward, and we have, from the embassy, we have ended up with three sectors that we believe will be maybe the most important for the coming couple of years. The first one is the maritime sector. We know that there will be a redistribution of fishing quotas in, I think it's 2017 that the decision is. So when that is clear, the long-awaited renewal of large parts of the Russian fishing fleet is due, and we think that the Norwegian shipyards, or many Norwegian shipyards, are, due to both geography and the fact that the quality is very high on the work that's being done in Norwegian shipyards, we're quite well positioned to take a part of that market opportunity when it comes. And it has been delayed. That's at least what the analysis tells us, that we can expect a major demand for those kinds of services. So the maritime sector tops the list. The agriculture is another area or sector where official Russian policy is that it must be drastically improved in Russia. Now, in order to do that, you would need support. And we believe that in this enormously big market, Norway has competence, we have equipment, and we might have consultancy services to provide to help in this. And as Sverre mentioned, aquaculture is a special branch within what we consider to be the agriculture sector, where we have done lots of research, we have excellent results, and hopefully we can achieve something together. The third sector is tourism. Although the economy is not very promising at the moment, this will change, and people will want to go on holiday. Now, the very unfortunate and tragic situations that we have seen lately, meaning that many people do not go on holiday to Egypt and Turkey from Russia at the moment. Well, I don't believe those who intended to go to Egypt are now planning to go to Norway. This is a totally different kind of holiday, obviously. But still, it is a fact that quite a few Russians take an interest in going to Norway, and we have looked at particularly, say, upper middle class, because it will never be inexpensive to go to Norway on a holiday. But we do have spectacular sceneries. We have excellent fishing opportunities. So a more activity-based and specialized holiday is actually quite attractive. And this is a market that is ongoing, and we think there are some very good growth opportunities here in both the long and the short term. So these three sectors will be will have the most focus, so to speak, and then, as I said, all the other projects that are ongoing will continue to be so. Oil and gas will continue, and so on. But these are what we see as the most promising in the short term. Now, in conclusion, then, we think that cooperation within trade and research is reasonably good, even in a complicated world. The potential for significant growth in commerce between Norway and Russia is there. Now, we do have economic and political restrictions that have an impact at the moment, but several sectors are not affected by any of these restrictions, and we should try and make the best out of that. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.